again, and welcome to Your Average Bear Gaming. I am George. Today, let's talk about the Aeldari Heavy Weapon Support Platform for the Guardians. Okay, it's a cool bit of kit, and it's going to add some flexibility to your Aeldari Guardians if you want it, but there's a problem. There's a bunch of weapons that you could potentially use. You could glue them together and commit yourself to using only one weapon variation on this thing, but why do that when you have the power of magnets? Today, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to look at at my approach at magnetizing the different weapon options to this platform, talk about some of the challenges, some of the magnet selections, in the hopes that when we're done, you'll have a solid approach to maximizing the tactical flexibility of this heavy support platform. It should be neat. Are you interested? I hope so. Let's check it out. So here is the box that our project for today comes from. It's the Aeldari Guardians box. It is not the Aeldari Storm Guardians box, but I'm still not sure what the difference is. So far as I can tell, you can use this to build Storm Guardians, and more appropriate for our project today, that weapons platform here, the heavy weapon support platform, that can also be we can transform that into the shield thing. It's like a serpent shield that goes with the Storm Guardians. So the Defender Guardians get a weapons platform. The Storm Guardians get a shield. And so we're not going to go between those two things. We're just going to go with the Defender Guardian variant. And here is the Aeldari Guardian variant. At least this is the hull, the little skid thing that the weapon floats on. This here is the shield that protects infantry behind it, I guess. And here are the 5 weapons that you could choose to put on your heavy weapons platform. Here we have what I'm pretty sure is a distortion cannon or something like it. Looks kind of cool. Here we have the multi-laser or scatter laser. I'm not quite sure what the Aeldari call their version of the multi-barreled laser gun, but this is that. This right here is a really cool looking shuriken catapult. This is the missile launcher. And finally, we have this bad boy, which is the Bright Lance, the Aeldari version of the las cannon, the big long Bernie boy. So each of these 5 weapons does entirely different things. Some of them are anti-personnel in nature. Some of them are kind of more anti-vehicle, anti-armor roles, and you never know really how you want to equip your Guardian Defender squad, or even if you want to take these things at all. But let's assume that you do. And let's assume that you're not always going to want to take a scatter laser. Sometimes you want to take the long Bernie boy, right? But if Games Workshop has its way, you glue this part to the hull, you glue the shield to that mounting thing, and then you pick just one of these weapons and you mount it on there, you glue it together, and that's your support platform forever. Let's just accept the fact that you're going to want to switch weapons, and you can do it a couple of different ways. I'm going to magnetize mine. You don't probably necessarily need to. You could probably just use some sticky tack and just go to town like that, but I do magnetizing. I sort of enjoy it, and I've gotten better at it, and I'm going to show you how I tackle this project. So let's talk about the problem first, and then we'll go about talking about how I solved it. So right here, this is our guy. This is the piece that's going to marry the hull and the weapon. So, a little closer look, here's the hull. Here's the mounting part. And you see that little tab right there? That fits the weapon right in this tab. Well, I guess that would be a slot. This would be a tab. And you glue these together like so. And so once that dries, you have your connection and you're done. But we're going to magnetize, so that means that we're going to have to figure out a way to fit some magnets in here and in here. So our first real problem is the width of this slot. This slot is about 1 millimeter wide and about 3, well no, maybe that's more like 4 or 5 millimeters across, and it's not very deep. It's probably 1.5 millimeters deep. So we don't have a lot of space to work with, right? And so most of our magnetization for this hobby involves the use of disc magnets. So they're little flat round deals, and you'd glue those in here and call it a day. You know, you'd make sure your orientations are correct and you're fine. But here we have a very small interface, and we have, at least sometimes, a relatively beefy weapon. So if I was just going to insert some magnets in here that'll fit into that slot after I glue them down, I'm limited to a magnet that is 1 millimeter in diameter. Those are really, really small. I could probably do 1 millimeter wide, and then 1.5 millimeters tall to give me a little bit of additional adhering power, attractive power, but I just don't think that the 1 millimeter disc is going to do it for me. It's not going to be enough to hold this thing down, not with any degree of confidence. So let me illustrate this point. These are 2 millimeters wide by 1 millimeters tall. And they are too big to go in this slot. I don't have any 1 millimeter diameter magnets. They're just really too small for most of my purposes. I can see where they would be useful maybe for magnetizing infantry, but why would you do that to yourself? So I don't have any on hand. And besides, let's just say that I did do that. I'd have to use probably 3 side by side, and in my experience, gluing magnets side by side is a recipe for a headache. As they're drying, they will try to flip on each other. If you do them one at a time, so if you put one in, it's going to be fine, but as you go to glue the second one in, it's going to want to flip before it's dry. It's all kinds of headache. But nothing bigger is going to fit in this slot. I don't really have that problem with the weapons because I have a little bit of space to play with. I could put a 2 millimeters wide disc magnet in here because I'm basically going to do away with that little tab, and I'm going to rest my magnets on that surface where the tab was, so I don't have to worry about that so much. But then I'd still find myself, if I want to use if I want to increase the attractive force, then I have to use multiple magnets and have to deal with that nonsense about gluing multiple magnets on the same time. One of the ways I've approached this problem in the past is instead of gluing the magnets on here one by one, I've glued them 3 at a time. So after I would tear off that tab, I would lay some glue down, and then I'd take a line of magnets, kind of like this, and stick them on there. And it sort of works, but the magnets get kind of misaligned, they get funky. There's a lot of nonsense that we'd have to deal with in order to make this happen. So I'm going to take my little box of magnets, put them in my magnet library, and I'm going to try something else entirely. And that comes from my second magnet library. It's these guys. These guys are box magnets. So they're the same kind of material, but they're shaped a little differently. And the way their poles align, well, it's pretty clear right here. So they're rectangles, not discs. So in this application, you'll notice that our slot is roughly a rectangle. Now, it's not exactly this dimension, but you know what? It'll work. If I can figure out a way of modifying this piece, it'll accept these magnets kind of like so. Now, these are the smallest I could find, but they're still too big for this base. This is roughly 2 millimeters across from exterior dimensions. This is a minimum of 3 millimeters across, so they're going to hang over by a half a millimeter on each side. But you know what? I think it'll look fine if we do that approach. Same thing here. I'll take off that tab, glue a couple of these, kind of like this on there, and that should give me a nice place to mount them. So when I'm all done, the stack of magnets here will go on to that stack of magnets right there, and we'll be good to go, and we'll have that satisfying click, click, click of a nicely magnetized toy. Really, it's a toy. So let's start with the first phase. It's going to be the easier of the two steps that we need to complete in order to accomplish this project, and that's going to be magnetizing the weapons themselves. So let's prepare to magnetize the weapons. So the best thing to do here is to just commit and break off all the tabs on all the weapons, like so. Having done all that, we are committed. There is no going back. Magnetization is our only option. Let's smooth our cut by taking off some of that excess flashing and some of the residue there, and also clean up the rest of the gun, because I haven't removed any mold lines or any flashing attachment points, etc., etc. Let's take care of that before we go any further. There it is, nice and smooth. These buffing sticks with the multi-grit paper on them, these really are my favorite. I just wish they came in a smaller size. If anyone of you knows of something just like this, but much, much thinner, let me know. I'd appreciate it, because I'd buy a ton of them. Now that our weapons are nice and clean, let's get some glue on there and start attaching the magnets. So I'll do a bit of super glue all along where this tab used to be. And then I take my stack of magnets. I've got 2 of them, kind of side by side. And I stick them down like that. Let them set for a sec. You'll notice that little stack of disc magnets at the very top. That helps me keep track of the polarity of the magnets, so that I'm always putting them down the exact same way. So I'll do this process with every weapon, and each of these weapons will have their stack of magnets attached the same way, in the same polarity, so that I make sure that when they go on the primer, on the weapon, I guess the mount part, all the magnets will be the same. So to make this process a little bit more efficient, you'll notice I have this stack here. I have a second stack with the same orientation indicated. Put down some glue, put down the magnets, and I can have as many of these stacks as I want, so I can do them all kind of in the same step, and then As these dry, I can remove the excess magnets so that I only have a single stack on each weapon. That should be all that it's needed. My weapons are all set up and they look just like this. So it looks a little funky. There's kind of a rectangular glob of magnets up there. I think it's going to be okay. When they're mounted on the weapons platform, it's a very small join. It won't be very noticeable. And I've learned that a decent paint job covers up a lot of sins with magnetization, so we'll go with that. So now we get to work with this piece. This is the part of the model that acts as the weapon mount. This is the interface between the weapon and the hull of the platform. And so I'm going to magnetize this. And so we have a couple of different options. None of them are ideal. So I don't have any magnets that are going to fit inside that little slot. And so if I'm going to fit magnets of this size, which are the smallest block magnets I have. In fact, this is even too small for my smallest disc magnets. I'm going to have to make some compromises. So I have a couple of approaches. One of them is I can remove this much material from this part right here. I can remove about 1 millimeter of this plastic so that I can kind of, when I attach the magnets, they don't actually add any height to the overall model as it is complete. And that's a decent option, except that if you look at that piece, if you look at this piece, it has some curvy, rounded elements to it. And if I'm going to sand down 1 millimeter of material off of this, it's gonna flatten out these curves, and I feel like that would be more visually disruptive. It would be kind of more, I don't know, it would kind of disfigure this piece more than simply adding a tiny stack of magnets on top of it. So I don't have a great solution for this. I mean, I suppose I could use understrength magnets as well, but that's going to be a no-go for me anyway. So I need to prepare this surface for these magnets. And so I could just glue them directly on here. My problem with that is that I feel like that's not going to be enough of a surface to glue stuff. You know what? No, that's probably fine. I won't have to do that. I'll just fill this in with super glue, add some super glue to the surface, and then stick the magnets on there. Alternatively, you could fill this slot with some green stuff. Once it cures and hardens, you can attach the models there after you do some sanding. I don't know that that's going to be necessary, so I'll just go ahead and super glue the magnets directly to this unfilled slot. And if that doesn't work, I can always go back, clean it up, and add some of the green stuff anyway. So let us switch our indicators here to the other side because I want this pole of the magnet to glue down to the surface. And so here, you'll see that they repel, which is exactly what I want. Oh. Okay, so I've been playing around with this, and it looks like the orientation across the height of the magnet, that's not how the poles are aligned. It looks like it is kind of this direction. So here, for example, it refuses to connect. But if I turn it this way, it loves it. And if I switch these magnets over to this side, So again, it repels, but as a pair, individually, they have no problem sticking, but as a pair, they have this problem. But if you turn it around, it sticks. So I'm going to need some experimenting with this polarity to make sure that it's oriented correctly, because I don't want my gun sticking to this mount facing backwards. That's going to be very bad for the morale of my troops. Alright, here's the part with the magnets on top of it. I did have a little bit of trouble getting the magnets to stay in place. I think it's fine now. It's not the prettiest job, but I think this is the best we can manage with the parts as they are. So, here's a moment of truth. Did I align this correctly? This part right here is where the shield will be attached. So, did this work? Yeah! Did it duplicate? Yeah! Alright! Alright, here is the heavy weapons platform, fully assembled and magnetized, and it doesn't look too bad. You can hardly tell that we did some magnetization on this until you get really close, and then you can see those shiny magnets right there. But it looks about the way it's supposed to. Just a little different, nothing major. And so just so you can see the different options, there's that. There's what I think is the D cannon. Scatter laser. And last but definitely not least, oh no! I got this one wrong. The polarities don't line up. Okay, I'll fix that. But when I fix that, I also want to show you, I don't know why everything else worked except for these, but I'll have to figure that out. But I do want to show you that. So right now it might look a little funny if you look too close. I want to show you that a lot of that will go away once you give it a paint. So let's give it a paint right now. And there we are, all painted up. We have ourselves a heavy weapon support platform for our Aeldari Guardians. And so you can take a look. The thing that I want to get across was this right here. You see the join where the magnets are. It's tough to spot. I mean, if you get closer, you'll absolutely see it. And there it is. So yeah, you can tell something is different about this weapons platform than you would normally, but it's not so bad. Let's switch it out for some other weapons. Right there. So yeah, it absolutely could look better. I just don't know that we could accomplish a smoother transition between the parts with magnets attached, given the size and the contours of the pieces involved. However, if I'm wrong, I would totally love to see how you solve this problem, because yeah, I'm always willing to learn something new. This is just how I solve the problem, just to show you that it is absolutely possible and that it isn't particularly hard, assuming you have the right parts. So if you find yourself in possession of one of these platforms and you'd like to be able to switch out the weapons but aren't quite sure how to do it, or aren't sure if it's hard enough that you can't do it, rest assured it's relatively easy. I mean, I can do it, so you can probably do a better job of it. All you need is some box magnets, and they're readily available on a bunch of different websites. I get mine from the Magnet Baron, but there's other places you can get them if that is your cup of tea. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful afternoon. Be nice to yourselves and each other. Peace.